Hey folks, welcome back to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today we're taking a look at Lancelot by Mario Papini, put out by WizKids. Now, I know Robert Geislinger's already done a review of this one, and he seemed to like this one a lot. So, it is a set collection game, very Euro stylish, but it has a really neat theme on it. And to be frank, the theme is what pulled me into this one. So basically, you're trying to collect different sets of materials that you're going to use in one way, shape, or form to complete different kinds of quests that are on the board, like virtue quests and dragon quests and searching for the Holy Grail and that type of stuff. And whoever has the most points after 8 rounds is the winner. That's generally how it goes. So let's get down to the table. I'll show you how it works in a very general way. Then we'll come back with some final thoughts in just a few moments. Now, Lancelot is played in a number of 8 rounds, and during those 8 rounds, players are able to take turns like so. First of all, moving and interacting with these different sites. When you're moving on the board, you move in a clockwise fashion, and you can move as far along that path as you would like, but you can never move counterclockwise. So you do have to be decisive on which places you're going to stop at, and how many places you stop at will, in part at least, determine how long the round goes. Now, the whole point of the game is to get points, and one of the main ways that a player can score points is by completing these different virtue quests. For example, they could try to accomplish the dexterity virtue, which will score them either 4 or 2 points respectively by having the most swords or lances or maces. Or they could go for the initiative virtue, which means that they can score 5 or 3 points if they have at least one of each kind of card available in the game. Now, another way to score points is by completing quests here at the dragon spaces. And points are scored by completing these quests. These quests are completed by turning in these number of tokens, except for Excalibur here. You never have to turn in Excalibur in order to complete one of these quests, but all of the other ones are tokens that you have to spend in order to get the points that are available for those tiles. At the beginning of the first round and at the beginning of every subsequent round, players are going to be able to choose where they start at the round table. For example, if someone decides to start in Arthur's chair, they will be able to place one of their tokens on the crown space on the virtues track, which means that they will be able to score the maximum number of points for completing that virtue rather than just the lower normal amount of points. If someone chooses to start on the Mordred chair at round table, they will be able to take their eyeball token, and if they stop at the Morgana spot, that will give them the opportunity to take another lap around the board in one round. If someone decides to start at Bedivere's chair at the round table, then they will be able to move 2 spaces along the joust track rather than just 1 each of their turns. Yeah. And if somebody decides to start at the Gawain chair, then they will be able to move 2 spaces along the track that they choose at the stronghold. If you choose to start at Maligant's place at the round table, then they will be getting a discount of 1 lance, 1 sword, or 1 mace if they try to accomplish one of those quests at the dragon spot on the board. If you choose to start at Tristan's chair at the round table, you'll be able to take 2 cards of each available color, either 2 pink and 2 white, 2 green and 2 white, or 2 red and 2 white, instead of just up to one of each. If you start in Merlin's chair, you're able to take 1 Merlin's magic token immediately before the round begins. And finally, if you start in Guinevere's chair at the round table, you simply take a victory point before the round begins, and that's that. Now, more often than not, when you stop at a track or a place on the board, you're simply going to be collecting things that will help you finish virtue quests throughout the course of the game. But there are a couple of places on the board that do something a little bit different, so we're going to take a little bit of time and do each of those now. If you stop at Galahad's space here, then you're able to take one of your tokens and declare which one of these quests you're going to actually be completing in a subsequent round. And then on that subsequent round, once you have met the requirements for the quest, you're able to stop at Percival's place and actually complete the quest, gaining the number of points. If your knight chooses to stop at the Grail quest, he will take the rightmost spot available to him. Subsequent people will take the furthest rightmost spot available to them. And if you are not ahead, whether you're alone or with somebody else, you simply take one spot. Later on in the game, if somebody shows up and they are not ahead, they will take 2 spots on the track. Now, this is another place where people can get points, but it's not until the very end of the game, because the person who is furthest along the Grail track will take a number of points equal to half the distance between himself and the person that is in last place, rounded up, at a minimum of 2 points. So it is possible for you to gain more points here, especially if you are very far ahead and the other person is in last place and really been neglecting the Grail throughout the course of the game. Additionally, concerning the Grail space, if all players are at the Grail space besides one person, and that person returns to the round table, then all people must return to the round table at that point. And then finally, we have the lake, where one can obtain Excalibur. Now, the person who decides to go to the lake will simply start on the rightmost track, and then each turn will move one towards Excalibur until finally he does take the token and places it in front of him. At the end of the round, he will then obtain Excalibur and place Excalibur's token back into the lake. Excalibur does give a 3-point bonus to the person who owns it at the end of the game, but he can also help you in finishing some of those quests at the Dragon Tile as well. Now, at the end of the game, you will score a number of bonus points if you have, for example, the most maces, the most lances, the most swords, or the most Dragon Quest tiles. And then, as I already mentioned, you also get bonus points for holding Excalibur at the end of the game as well. But generally speaking, the virtues are the main way that you get points, and if you neglect to do virtue quests, you'll have a very difficult time winning the game. So that is Lancelot from WizKids. Now, I have to say, on the offset, I was very, very interested in this game because I am a sucker for Arthurian legend and lore. I love the stories about it. I don't love every aspect of those stories, don't get me wrong, but I do enjoy that genre of literature and so forth and so on. Now, I do have to say that when I first saw the board, wow, it popped. And that's going to be my first pro of the game. The artwork on the board is amazing. And the artwork on the back of these cards is also amazing. So the artwork definitely drew me in. I was also a very big fan of the box cover. Some people that I've talked to said that it was very lackluster, but I highly disagree with them. I think it's a great presentation, especially for those who are interested in Arthurian lore and legend. Now, here's the thing. The graphic design, however, beyond the artwork on the board, is not that great. And we'll get to that more in a little bit later on. Now, another pro of the game is the fact that your turns are very quick. Now, I will say that there is a little bit of analysis paralysis pronage going on here, because you can think too heavily about what is your most optimal move to make at any given point in time. And there are other factors that will weigh in on your decision depending upon, for example, what your opponent might be wanting to do. How soon does your opponent want to get back to the round table to begin the next round? Those kinds of considerations have to be made. But generally speaking, your turn is very quickly. You choose where you want to go, you collect that resource, or you do that thing, whatever it might be, and your turn is over. And then once everybody has taken all of the turns they want and are back at the round table, you do a couple of accounting upkeep during a phase there, and then you begin the next round, and you do that through 8 rounds. So it doesn't play that long, which is a good thing. And then finally, my third pro of the game is the, and this is actually one of the mechanisms of the game, is the Merlin potion tokens that you can get throughout the course of the game. I have failed to mention them during the playthrough part because I was going to focus on them here. I really do enjoy the Merlin aspects of it because it gives you 3 opportunities to do things. For example, you can get rid of a bunch of cards, which is necessary because, frankly, some of those virtues are very specific on what you need to have at your behest at that specific moment in time. So getting rid of some cards is very necessary. It also gives you the opportunity to swap out one card for another card, which again goes back to that very specific requirements of some of those things. And you can also get rid of some of these tokens that you have so that you can, again, meet the very specific requirements for some of those quests. But I like that ability where it takes one of the aspects of Arthurian legend, the fact that Merlin was a magician, and it adds that into the game, but it doesn't overwhelmingly do that. So it doesn't cramp or overshadow other parts of the game's mechanisms, but it gives you the ability to do something that's a little bit against the rules to make up for that magical implementation into the Arthurian legend. So I like that one as well. Now, having said all of those pros, I do want to get to the cons here pretty quickly, and I alluded to one of them already, and that is part of the graphic design of the game. And that comes to the fact that some of the spots, first of all, you have these tokens that are color-coded. You have swords here, and then you have squires or helmets here. Then you have maces here and lances here. And you have these differing colors that are very easy to spot. The problem is that they don't have those colors on the board. They're just kind of a gray background. It would have been a better graphical connection if the tokens' colors were represented on the board. Additionally, another graphic design choice are these cards. Now, this might be a very, small thing to some people, but if you look at this side as compared to this side here, this is great artwork. This looks really cool. Not so much. Cool? Not cool. These stand out like a sore thumb compared to the board and even the Virtues board. So a very glaring, at least in my opinion, graphic disconnect in this game. I thought the board was amazingly well done, and then these cards are just not that great at all. Another thing that I thought was poor, and this falls in the graphic design aspect of it, is these are your score tokens. Well, how do you know that? Well, you don't know that if they're face down like this. Only when they are face up like this do you know that they are scoring tokens. Similarly, I have 2 tokens here. Are they possibly the same? Won't know until we actually turn them over. And oh look, they're actually different. So this makes setting up the game a little bit longer than it really should, but I know that's a minor thing. That's why I'm throwing it underneath the umbrella of the other con that I already mentioned. Another con of the game is the Holy Grail mechanism, and that Grail track where basically it's a catch-up mechanism, possibly, but even then it's not a very good one because it's very easily negated. Any bonus that you might be getting can be easily diminished by the end of the game by those other people, even making even just a half-hearted effort at doing so. It seems like just another thing. It almost seems like they made the game and they thought, oh no, we forgot to add in the quest for the Holy Grail in this game. How are we going to do that? Well, let's do this. And they just kind of threw it in. It felt just tacked on at the end. It doesn't feel like an integral system that can be really used. And that's unfortunate, because that is a huge part, well, at least in my opinion, it's a huge part of the Arthurian legend, is the quest for the Holy Grail. Now, having said all that, I think this is a good game. I think it's fun to play. I do think that if you have people that are prone to paralyzing themselves, analyzing what they should do on their turn, then yeah, it can overstay its welcome. It can definitely play longer than it should. But again, and I say this graciously, that's simply you're playing the game with the wrong people, not necessarily something that's wrong with the game per se. However, it does have mechanisms in it that allow for that. So I think it owns part of that responsibility, just not all of it. But I think that it's fun. I think it has some parts that I wish were not as clunky. For example, the Holy Grail seems to be that, where it just seems like you can waste a lot of time doing that when you really should be putting more thought into a better turn and using better, more efficient actions. So there's that. I think that some of the graphical design choices that I already talked about really kind of diminishes the value of the game a little bit. But all in all, I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10 because I did enjoy it. I think it's above average, but it isn't quite there. It isn't quite there for something that I want a seal of approval on, because I think that some of the graphic design choices that they made were somewhat egregious and very disconnecting. So having said all of that, I hope I'm not being too mean. I did enjoy the game. I will say that of the people that I played the game with, I think I probably enjoyed it the most, with only a couple of exceptions. So having said all of that, you also have Robert's review to go look at and his thoughts at the end as well. So you can take that and what I've said and kind of weigh them together and make your own decision. But that's it from me, a 6 out of 10 for Lancelot from WizKids. We'll see you guys on the flip side.